Hey English 1102 friends, this is a short video going over a couple of poems. We're going to go over A Blessing by James Wright and Possum Crossing by Nikki Giovanni. Both of these are under the Nature and Settings module in D2L. And I stuck them together because they are both sort of celebrating these interactions with animals and living in the sort of animal world and sort of enjoying like a little encounter with animals. Even though it turns out in Possum Crossing that it's not actually an animal that she sees. But they're about like appreciating animals when you see them, you know, either in your driveway or on the side of the highway or something like that. And sort of acknowledging that we share the world with other creatures other than just people. The first one is A Blessing by James Wright. What's great about this poem and what makes it sort of easy to understand is this poem is just really about a little moment where these people are driving on the highway, they see some horses on the side of the road in a little pasture, they pull off the side of the road and pet the horses, and that's all that happens. That's all this poem is trying to show you, and that's really all the blessing is this sort of happy moment that spontaneously happens on the side of the road because they stop to pull over and are like, they see these horses. Just off the highway to Rochester, Minnesota, twilight, so it's like sunset, you know, the sun's going down, it's a really pretty time of day. Twilight bounds softly forth on the grass, and the eyes of those two Indian ponies darken with kindness. So they see in a pasture, you know, somewhere outside of the city, they're somewhere outside of the city in Minnesota, and they, since they're out in the country, they see this pasture with just a couple of small little ponies, small horses in it. They have come gladly out of the willows to welcome my friend and me, and we step over the barbed wire into the pasture. So the horses see them and are fine with them, and then they see the horses and step over those little barbed wire fence. Where they have been grazing all day alone, they ripple tensely. They can hardly contain their happiness that we have come. So the horses, you know, they either are fine with people, they're fine with being around people, or they may think these people have brought food. They bow shyly as wet swans. They love each other. There is no loneliness like theirs. At home once more, they begin munching the soft tufts of spring in the darkness. So you find out it's spring too, and like they pay attention to the people who are coming to, these two people that are coming to see them for just a minute. Then they go back to just eating the grass. I would like to hold the slenderer one in my arms, for she has walked over to me and nuzzled my left hand. She is black and white, her mane falls wild on her forehead, and the light breeze moves me to caress her long ear that is delicate as the skin over a girl's wrist. And if you've ever, you know, touched a horse's head, you know that their little ear, the skin of their ear is this sort of thin, delicate feeling little stretched piece of skin. And so he touches it and talks about how delicate it is. Suddenly I realized that if I stepped out of my body, I would break into blossom. And again, this is a poem, he tells you it's spring, and he feels like he too could, like this guy's so happy, he feels like he too could just blossom into happiness because he's just having this nice, happy little moment petting these horses. And that's really all this poem is this nice, happy moment. Many of y'all may have had this, like, you know, holding a puppy or petting your dog after a hard day or something like that. This poem is some little moment shared with an animal, and touching the animal makes you feel really happy. You know, petting the animal and the animal being happy and you being happy to pet it just makes you really happy, and it feels like a little blessing. That's all this poem is about. It's one of those little moments of blessing when everything feels right and warm and perfect. Possum Crossing by Nick and James Wright has passed away now. A lot of his writing is about these moments and seeing particular intense moments in life, just like this one. Nikki Giovanni is still alive. You can see she was born in 1943. She teaches at Virginia Tech University now. She's from Tennessee. This is one of her more famous poems, I think, because it is about paying attention. This poem is about paying a little closer attention when you're driving and not hitting not hitting things that become roadkill, especially the things that we don't really think about, like squirrels and small things like possums. Backing out the driveway, the car lights cast an eerie glow. So it's morning, and she's backing out the driveway to go to work. In the morning fog, centering on movement in the rain-slick street. Hitting brakes, And so y'all have had this experience before. You're backing up, maybe it's dark at night or early in the morning, and you think you see something move and you just hit the brakes. You're like, oh God, you're afraid you're gonna hit something. Hitting brakes, I anticipate a squirrel or a cat or sometimes a little raccoon. I once braked for a blind little mole who tried, though he did, could not escape the cat toying with his life. Mother-to-be Possum occasionally lopes home, being naturally slow. Her condition makes her even more ginger. And so she thinks about all the animals that might be running behind her car that she might want to brake and be careful not to hit, like a squirrel or a cat, or a possum, pregnant possum. We need a sign, possum crossing, to warn coffee gurgling neighbors we share the streets with more than trucks and vans and railroad crossings. And so there you get to the core of this poem right here. This sort of people need to be more aware, not just of other cars and the trains and stuff like that. People need to watch out for the animals and try a little harder not to hit them and kill them. All birds, being the living kin of dinosaurs, and that is true, birds are descendants of dinosaurs, think themselves invincible and pay no heed to the rolling wheels while they dine on an unlucky rabbit. Y'all have had this experience. There's some vulture, buzzard eating something in the road, and you're driving down the road and you think it's not going to fly away in time, and then at the last second they fly away. I hit brakes for the flutter of lights, hoping it's not a deer or a skunk or a groundhog, something bigger. Coffee splashes over the cup, which I quickly put away from me and into the empty passenger seat. I look, relieved and exasperated, to discover I've just missed a big wet leaf struggling to lift itself into the wind and live. And so what she saw in the rearview mirror wasn't even an animal. It was just a big wet leaf that was getting blown around by the wind, like one of those big hardwood leaves that gets blown around. And so what this poem is this sort of being careful, being on the lookout, maybe so careful that you accidentally stop for a leaf that's getting blown around. But you see something or some motion in the rearview mirror and hit the brakes really quickly. But it's about being more careful and acknowledging that we share the world with more than just other cars and stuff like that. And especially if you're out of the car and just out walking around, like the guy in A Blessing, you see things a little slower and realize there's more stuff out there like possums and deer and that kind of thing. So hopefully both of these poems are about a moment. This is an early morning moment where she hits the brakes because she doesn't want to hit an animal. A Blessing is a sunset moment where he has this nice happy moment petting this horse. Both of these are animal poems and sort of being aware of the animals in the world. So hopefully that helps you see the connection between both of these and understand both of them a little bit better. Thanks for your time.